biggest question when you were hired to outsiders is why would you come to a place where you don't have the play calling responsibilities after being interviewed for head coaching jobs this year?
To me, it's pretty simple. I've always chosen places based on the people and the opportunity to win. At least I thought that the decisions I've made in the past. So, and I won't talk about other opportunities. It just when you look at the young roster, when I came and met with Freddie and John and the other people in the organization, it just felt right. Felt like I wanted to be a part of this moving forward. Because in the end, it's about winning. It's about being around good people. It's about moving the football, irrespective of who's calling it. And I've called it in the past, so it's not as if I'm not capable of that.
So what are your impressions of Baker Mayfield?
Well, I mean, first off, personally, I've just met him, so that part of it will come. Obviously, on film, it's easy to see his skill set, his ability to make plays outside the pocket, what he brings to the team in terms of mental toughness, the leadership part. He inspires others to play around him. He holds himself and others to a high standard, which is where you've got to start at quarterback. So I'm excited to get started. Unfortunately, it'll be a couple months away, but it's an exciting time.
Thinking on the passing game and how much of the quote-unquote air raid can be integrated into the NFL?
I don't it's interesting when I went to Oklahoma State from Jacksonville, and it was the air raid, as we use our fingers to say that. But it's really what I took away from it was being able to throw to win. That really, to me, was the air raid. You had a certain amount of run game, ran a lot of the same concepts, and you could throw to win. That was really it. And like any offense, it works a lot better if you have good players. That's really what it's about. It's about having good players and doing things the right way consistently, so you do it better than they do it. It becomes a lot harder at the NFL level because you're going against the best in the world, and windows are tighter, and you're under duress a lot more, so you've got to be disciplined in terms of what you do on the perimeter.
What do you mean when you say throw to win? Explain that a little bit.
Well, I think balance is multiple skill players touching the football. To me, it's not always just run pass. It's, do you have enough skill players where they can touch the football? Last year at Tampa, we almost had 6 guys, if OJ doesn't get hurt, of 700 plus yards from line of scrimmage. Well, to me, that's balance. You have a number of guys that can hurt you from a matchup standpoint. Is running the football important? Sure, because in order to win, you've got to be explosive and not turning the ball over. How do you become explosive space players and throwing it over their head or throwing intermediate pockets, and running the football adds to that.
How are you when you're working for a coach who calls the plays? So then, and you're the offensive coordinator. So how basically your duties would be defined as what to those of us maybe from the outside who aren't locked in?
We'll see. I've been here 7 days.
But I mean, would you talk about this before you take the job?
Well, somewhat, but it's always different once you get the job, right? We've all gone through interviews. I'm being silly, but the bottom line is like any assistant coach, your job is to do whatever the head coach tells you to do. That's what you do. If the head coach says, do this, then you do that. If he says on the field today to do that, that's what you do. If he decides that he doesn't want to call it and he says, you call it, I'll call it. That's what I did last year.
Yeah, like that's before where sometimes, well, I guess what, last year sometimes you called plays and sometimes you didn't? Is that what it was?
Just one game.
In terms of the head coach, would you flesh out your perspective of Freddie as a person, as a coach, and as a technician?
Well, again, I'd say that's early. From what I've seen and what I've heard, I was excited to be a part of it. I think our personalities match, which is nice to be a part of. So it matched with Coach Cutter. So, when you start looking at taking jobs, at least for me, in order of what I was looking for was opportunity to win, potentially a franchise quarterback, the right people, and third was calling the plays. That's what I did when I went to Tampa. Didn't work out that way, but that's the decision I made to leave Southern Miss. It's exactly the same decision I made to come here, was in that order. With that being said, I think our personalities, in terms of as people, are pretty close, but also in terms of being aggressive offensively. So when I watched what they did the last 8 weeks of the year and how they went about it and organizationally, it was something I wanted to be a part of.
I know it's early, but when you take Freddie's offense in like your scheme, how do you see that meshing be the new playbook for 2019?
We're working through that now. So that's something that is always fun, takes time, but it's something that as we come together, because, Freddie was here 1 year, and so initially Todd Haley's system, terminology, you've got that running around his head. You've got what they did in Arizona with Bruce Arians for a number of years. And then we've got what we did at Tampa and some other things that the other coaches will bring to the table. You've got James, in the run game and what they did at Green Bay. So we're working through that now to make it the Browns offense. And that's what you do. Next offseason will be a lot easier because you'll have had everything, or at least a majority of your offensive package put together and what you like and dislike. And so every day's, as you're implementing things and talking through it, it's going to become easier.
Did you know Freddie from anywhere? That you guys didn't
Never
cross
met
paths?
him.
Okay. So they called, I guess. Is that
Mhm.
they called and then you met him?
Mhm.
Have you done that before, where you've taken a job where you didn't know as an assistant, where you didn't know the head coach, or?
That happens. I mean, you get a head coaching job, you don't know the people there normally. Sometimes that happens, or you take a job where when I went to Jacksonville, however many years ago, I really didn't know anybody there. It just happened where you do a good job, someone recommends you, and out of the blue you get a call. And I wouldn't say it's out of the blue, but bottom line is do a great job where you're at, and hopefully that'll, people will see that. That's all I ever control is the job I do where I'm at. So and what I'm asked to do. That's the job of any assistant coach.
Todd, when you talk about opportunity to win, how do you view the talent here relative to that?
Well, that's hard to say even this early without really actually getting on the field, because there's more to it than just looking at film. As we all know, even when you're preparing for the draft, what you see on film is just part of the product. It's a big part of it, but then how each player is wired, and then what you can do to utilize their skill set, what was done before with a certain player, and then how they'll improve, what you can do to help improve players. This is a developmental league. You're only going to get so many draft picks. You're only going to get so many free agents. So you've got to develop your younger players. It's maximizing players' measurable skill set. That's what we're paid to do, is to get the players to play at a high level.
The fact that you have worked with another #1 overall pick as a quarterback in Jameis, will that help you in any way with, the mindset of Baker or anything along those lines?
Oh, I don't know. The one thing that what I hear about Baker, similar to Jameis is a tremendous young man. He loves football. He's very intelligent. He's passionate about it. He owns it. Those are all the things that I hear about Baker. A guy that loves football, loves to compete, loves to be around the building, and owns his mistakes, which is a great start.
You don't mind sharing your take on an aside, that as you spent a week preparing for the Browns defense, just to condense that into a question, obviously Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward are players of note, but what were your impressions of them when you were preparing for the Browns?
Young and talented. I think that's probably the best way of putting it, which is probably a lot to say about the overall roster. Fairly young and talented with a chance to catch a franchise ascending. That's what you're trying to do, is to get somewhere where you've got young, talented players. So, it's hard for me to think back that long ago, other than that we tried to screw it up. That's all I remember about it. But we found a way, thank God, at the end to get that win. But that's really what I remember about it.
From your perspective as an offensive coordinator, and not calling Denzel Ward this yet, but if you do face a shutdown man corner, how disruptive is that for you as an offensive coordinator?
It's disruptive. That's where we talk about balance before. It's not nearly as disruptive if you have other pieces, much more disruptive if you don't. The fewer pieces you have, the more disruptive one player on the defensive side can be, same as an edge rusher. An edge rusher can be very disruptive if your piece that's trying to block him is subpar, and then you've got to create other ways to chip or help, if that makes sense when we're talking about those players. So sure, when you start talking about building a defense, it starts with rushers and corners. That's where it starts. And then offensively, it starts with your tackles and your quarterback. So, that's where you kind of work from those ends.
air quotes, but how much of that air raid systems from colleges have you seen in the NFL over the last couple of years, kind of the integration of some of those college parts of the
Well, I think everything gets clumped into air raid, just like a lot of years it got clumped into West Coast offense, if that makes sense. Oh, it's a West Coast offense. Well, what does that mean? Maybe by verbiage, but not by concepts or how they go about attacking people. So I think when you look at what teams are doing now, if you said, do I see the college game influence in the NFL? Without a doubt. You see that with probably the team you see it most with is Kansas City. Kansas City's run game is, I wouldn't say exclusively, but a high number of RPOs or ways to get it out of that young man's hands, and he's good at it. And they've got good skill guys around him. So if you wanted to match up what some college football teams look like, you'd probably say Kansas City. There's some other teams, and you could take the Eagles and the Colts, where you're talking about RPOs and different ways for run-pass options, which has, been prevalent in college, which the rules are a little more advantageous in college in terms of linemen being downfield and blocking downfield, which enables you to do a little bit things more in the screen game and throwing on the perimeter. But in a lot of ways, you have to be committed to it. You have to look at those plays as one play. I think people get caught up in that. That's why when I talked about balance is if you have a run play with an RPO built in it, that's a play. That's not run pass. The efficiency of that play is what matters, not who touched it. And sometimes we get way caught up in run yards, pass yards. It's efficiency of what you do, being explosive, not turning it over, scoring touchdowns. That's really what it's about.
Something you feel strong about and would like to integrate a lot of the RPOs?
I think a lot is probably an extreme, but I think we'd be, I think that's where football has been. That's been my background. So hopefully it's something that interests Freddie.
I'm sure it took a lot of work to turn around Southern Miss there. I was just looking at your record, how it went from there. Why did you leave there to go to the NFL as an assistant?
First of all, it was hard. It was taking over an 0-12 program. At some point in your career, you get those jobs and you think, oh yeah, I'm the reason. This will be real easy. I'll come in here and we'll get this thing rolling. I lost my first 11 games as head coach, and it's misery. You take the podium and have a smile on your face, and you're the face of that program, and it was a lot of hard work, and a lot of work went into it with our assistants and the players we had. Thought our assistant coaches did a great job of developing players. There's 8 guys from that when we got there. They're now in the NFL. So there was a number of players that added into that to developing those players, and to see it come to fruition was very rewarding, but very difficult to leave the staff and those players. The time I did wasn't an easy decision, but at times in our profession, you have to make a decision of what chair you want to be in, irrespective of money or comfort. It's what chair do you want to be in to challenge yourself as a man, as a coach, and that was what went into the decision. I went to go work at a place where, very similar to here, I thought young roster, young first pick in the draft quarterback, an offensive-minded head coach, people I believed in terms of choosing players, which is important as anything, who you have on your roster, who's choosing those players. So it went into the same mindset of when I left there. And so it was maybe one of the most difficult decisions I've made in my coaching career, is leaving a place we spent all that time working to build it. But I wanted to see what was next.
You like the NFL game better?
No, I wouldn't say I like it better. I love coaching. I love the challenge of game day and doing it better than they do it. It's different. Your rewards you get in the NFL is different than the rewards you get in college. The winning is the same, but the developing of younger people and what you get out of college coaching the same things that you get out of the reward you get is the same things that wear you out, just like your own children. The same things that you get the reward from your own children is the same thing that wears you out. So it's a little bit more difficult in that regard, but the rewards you get out of the NFL is doing it against the best in the world, and your margin for error is so much smaller.
With Mayfield going from year 1 to year 2, how crucial is this offseason for him, and what would be your message to him along those lines?
Well, there's not one singular message. I think the hardest part any young player has, it's hard without knowing him, but it's not just him, it's any young player, is to how do you block out the noise. He has it the hardest, as does a head coach. Your players nowadays with so much volume, and most of them will be lying if they said they didn't look at it, just like us. You know, you look at it. I mean, we all like to be told we're doing a good job. So to me, the most important thing is to stay balanced in terms of the good or bad said about you, like all of us. I mean, it is what it is. Everybody has a job to do. But the bottom line is how do you stay, in terms of, flat-lined in terms of the good or the bad that's said about you. I think that's probably the most important thing. That, as much as anything, is the hardest part is, just whether it's negative or positive, just believe in yourself, and let's keep trying to figure out a way to do it. That's all of your players, especially young players. So, because the other time's going to come. I mean, there's no time in any player's career where it doesn't come where there's going to be doubt. There's going to be stretches of games where you don't play as well, and games where stretches where you play well. You've got to be able to continue to keep moving forward.
You mentioned trusting the guy who picks the players. Did you know John Dorsey before you came here?
No.
You just seen enough from him?
Felt good about it in his past. When someone shows an interest of you, you do a little research on them as well. They're researching you. You do more research if you have, some other opportunities. So and then when you meet somebody and you take a look at the roster, you kind of go from there.
Isn't that kind of unusual to take a job when you don't know anybody on the?
Not in my mind. It's not about who you know. It's you get a little bit of a feel for it. You'd be amazed at the head coaching interviews how much time they actually spend with you to make a decision. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just saying in general that the bottom line is no matter what job you take, whether it's an hour meeting or a 3-hour meeting, you got to do your research from people that really know who they are, because anybody can fool you. Just like, when I was interviewing for a couple head coaching jobs, I'd hope they'd asked people about me, not just taking my word for it, because anybody can stand up there and tell you what you want to hear. And the proof is in, you want to know what kind of coach I am? Ask the guys I coached. Ask the guys I coached with. Don't ask me. If you want to know what kind of husband I am, ask my wife. You want to know what kind of father I am, ask my child. That's what really matters. But the rest of it, you do your research and find out who the people are. And sure, there's going to be, times where, when it gets tough, that's when you find out who people really are. Right now, this is the honeymoon. Had a great run, the back half of the year. And we'll see. We've got a good young roster, and I like what I see so far, and hopefully they do in me.
Talking to Freddie Kitchens just at the Senior Bowl recently, I was asking him about, or we were asking him about the air raid and his familiarity with it, and he said, I don't even really know what the air raid is. I mean, he's kind of kidding around about it, but so my question to you is, do you feel he's really open to learning this, and is that one of the reasons you took the job, that he's very open-minded and collaborative and ready for
I think that, not based on air raid or my past, I shouldn't say that. I think the interest starts with my past, not particularly always just with the air raid, because when I left Jacksonville and went there, I had to learn that. Dana Holgerson had been there at Oklahoma State, so you take a system and the terminology and you make it your own. And hopefully we did a good job of that. Brandon came here. Brandon was a big reason we won, Brandon Whedon. So we did some good things there, but we also incorporated things we did in Jacksonville, or things we'd done at Louisiana Tech, or things we'd done at Eastern Michigan, or places I'd been before, things we'd done at Jacksonville. Just like here, there's certain things you do at Oklahoma State that you like, and there's certain things that we did at Tampa. And when you get to do it, then you get to decide. Did I feel that Freddie was open to what we had done at previous places, or I'd have been involved in? Of course. You certainly don't take it with the idea that, hey, I won't have any input into what we're going to do offensively. Ultimately, it's always the head coach's decision. It doesn't matter whether you're calling it or not. The head coach has the last say in everything that you do. So obviously me coming here was a part of that, it being a collaborative decision in what we did. Ultimately, someone has to call the plays. And someone says, well, was there anything in terms of when you'd call it? No. When he decides he doesn't want to call it, then hopefully I'm the guy he'd want to call it. So I wanted to be at a place that when I did get a chance to call it, I would feel good about the place I'm at, which is where it was at Tampa.
So last
Last
night,
one here.
Baker was asked his initial thoughts, and he kidded that he's an Oklahoma State guy at heart, so we gotta, him being at Oklahoma and all that. But then he also said, I think we're going to have to find ways to convince him to hand the ball off to Chubb.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I like scoring points, so however that is, I think that's a little misnomer at Tampa. We did throw it. I do like to throw it, of course. But, if you take first quarter stats, if you take first half, if you take one-score games, you'll find that we were right there with, a lot of other teams that made the playoffs, and it wasn't that extreme. But as we all know, the more often you're in 2 minute, the more you're at the end of the game and you're down, the more often you're going to throw it. But, yeah, it does absolutely stink that he's from Oklahoma. That was probably the negative that almost stopped me from taking the job. First thing I said was in 2011, we won the Big 12 and beat Oklahoma. And he goes, yeah, but you had like a 38-year-old quarterback. So it didn't take him long to bite back. I said, really, you're just a Red Raider. You're just a Red Raider that, was a transplant. So he didn't like that very well either. So we'll be just fine.